I want to thank the Carishes for their sponsorship and in memory of Etty's mother. Am I right? Or father? Father, in memory of Etty's father. Am I correct, Jay, or do I got it wrong?
No, we actually are unsponsored today.
Oh, okay, we're unsponsored.
But that only it gives us an opportunity to tell everyone whomever would like to sponsor, we always welcome your support and participation.
Okay. That wasn't a setup, everyone. It was just my view.
We rehearsed that well.
Right. At the outset of this year, I want to review with you where we are up to. There are, as I said previously, 6 mitzvos hayom issues which have to be accounted for when Purim in Yerushalayim falls on Shabbos, what we call Purim Mishulash. There's a mitzvah of Kriyat Megillah, Matanot Levyonim, Al Hanisim, saying Al Hanisim, Kriyat HaTorah, Sudat Purim, and Meshloach Manot. Today, we have explained why the first 4 are celebrated when they are, and the first of the 4, those are, one of the explanations, however, causes a problem for the last 2. And what am I talking about? In other words, one of the explanations as to why we read the Megillah and have Matanot Levyonim causes a problem with why we have Sudat Purim and Mishloach Manot on Sunday. And what do I mean? We explained that the Megillah is not read on Shabbat because we are afraid Shema Yavirenu Dalad Amot B'Shut Rabbim, that somebody will come to carry the Megillah, literally scroll, to learn how to read the Megillah 4 Amos. Alternatively, why? Because Einei Ha'aniyim Nesuot L'Mikra Megillah, and that's why we give Matanot Levyonim. What these 2 reasons do not explain is why we read the Megillah. Now, as we understand maybe why they come together, but we don't really understand why it is that we read or perform these mitzvot earlier than the day of Shushan Purim, okay? The Gemara in Megillah, in effect, says that the reason is found in the Pasuk in Megillat Esther, in Perek Tet, Pasuk Zayin, in which it says, one second. Where are we? Pasuk Zayin, where is it? Okay. I'm sorry. Pasuk Chaf Zayin. Ki mu v'kiblu hayudim aleihem v'al zaram v'al kol hanilvim aleihem v'lo ya'avor liot osim et shnei hayomim ha'ela kichsavam v'chizmanam b'chol shana v'shana. The Jews accepted upon themselves and upon their succeeding generations and everybody who was attached to them. It should not go further. Liot osim et shnei hayomim, to make the 14th and the 15th, kichsavam v'chizmanam, as is set forth in the Megillah, b'chol shana v'shana, every year. Says the Gemara, in effect, the reason that we read the Megillah and give Matanot Le'avyonim earlier is found in that pasuk, from the words lo ya'avor, shall not go past. The Gemara understood that the latest anything could be celebrated was the 15th, and everything, or so we thought, that could not be celebrated on Shabbat was perforce moved up to Friday. Why do we read the Megillah on Friday? We read the Megillah on Friday because the pasuk tells us v'lo ya'avor. You can't go past those 2 days to be Mekayim the mitzvahs. At least that's the way Chazal understood it. So therefore, it was the understanding that all the mitzvot either had to be performed bo bayom on the 15th or earlier, right? The first Mishnah in Masechet Megillah talks about how the people who come in from the villages, etc., read the Megillah on the what's called the Yom HaKnisa, like on Shuk Day, in order to accomplish that mitzvah, because they can't read it. They're not coming in when somebody could read it for them on the actual day, but they don't put it off to the next week. They read it earlier in the week. Comes along the Gemara in the Yerushalmi. It says the following. 1 second. The Yerushalmi says, Kriyat Megillah utrumat shkalim makdimim v'lo ma'achrim. Kriyat Megillah, reading the Megillah, and giving matanot le'evyonim, what the Yerushalmi calls utrumat shkalim, makdimim v'lo ma'achrim. We move them up. We move them up to the day before. Sudat Rosh Chodesh, if Rosh Chodesh occurs on a Shabbat, Udat Purim, or if the Purim Suda should be on Shabbos, which it should be in Yerushalayim this year on the 15th, Ma'acharim v'lo ma'akdimim. That mitzvah we postpone and do it afterwards. Ask the Yerushalmi. Rabbi Zera boy kumu Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Zera asked Rabbi Abba the following. Why should we make Sudat Purim on Shabbat? Why are we putting it off? Let's make it on Shabbat. Omale, Lasoto Tam Yemei Simcha Mishtev Simcha. The Megillah says that you have to make them Yom Mishtev Simcha. Etche Simchato Tluya Bevetin. Yotza Zeh Simchato Tluya B'Yidei Shamayim. In other words, what the Yerushalmi is answering is the following. Asks Rabbi Zeira of Rabbi Bo, why don't we simply make the Purim Suda on Shabbos? We're eating festively anyway. Answers the Gemara, or answers Rabbi Bo, that the Megillah says you have to make them Yemei Simcha, Mishtev Simcha. That is a creation or a creature of what the rabbis said. It's totally in Bezdin. In other words, what do you mean? When do we make the beginning of the month? And only then will we decide when Sudat Purim is. Shabbos happens every week. So you can't mix something whose simcha is Tluya B'dei Shamayim, that the Ribono Shalom said on Shabbos, Shabbos is Shabbos, with something that the Bezdin is going to say when the 14th or the 15th turns out. And for that reason, you can't mix the Megillah, the Sudas Purim with Shabbos. That's the answer in the Yerushalmi, okay? How do we understand this? Why do we put the Suda off to Sunday? And why don't we make it on Friday? If the time of the Suda should have been on Shabbos, I mean, it should have been on Shabbos for us. That's when the 15th has it. Says the answer suggests, then therefore, since the Suda only first happens, or the chiyuv of the Suda only first comes about on Shabbos, and since on Shabbos we can't make it because we can't mix something that Bezdin is Koveya sets with something that the Ribono Shalom sets, so we can't do it on the 6th day, meaning on Friday. Why? Because the person still is not obligated in Sudas Purim, and he can't be Mekayim the mitzvah of Suda. Only on Shabbos does he become obligated, but he can't fulfill it for the reason that we gave, because it's not up to Bezdin to it's up to Bezdin to set the time of Purim, but because Bezdin sets the time, it conflicts with the time set by God for Simchas Shabbos. I'm going to say something about that in a second, and therefore it can't be. And therefore, the first time we can have Sudas Purim suggests this answer or explanation of the Yerushalmi is on Sunday, and that's when we make it. Okay. One thing I just want to point out: there are major discussions among Rishonim as to whether or not there's no question that there's a mitzvah of Simcha on Yontif. There's a double mitzvah of Simcha on Sukkot. There's a mitzvah of Simcha. Whether or not there is a mitzvah of Simcha on Shabbos is a question discussed by the Rishonim. There certainly is a mitzvah of Oneg on Shabbos, which is different than Simcha. Whether or not there's a mitzvah of Simcha on Shabbos is a different question. I would suggest to you that this Gemara, this Yerushalmi rather, which is also a Gemara obviously, this Yerushalmi seems to side with those that says that there is in fact a mitzvah of Simcha on Shabbos. Okay, so why do we put it off? Because there's no chiyuv. But Rishonim ask on this Yerushalmi the following. Okay. There's still a problem that's hanging out, if I could use that term. What is the problem that's hanging out? What about the pasuk? The pasuk says, "V'lo ya'avor," you shouldn't go past, right? So therefore, even though the mitzvah of Kriyas HaMegillah really is on Shabbos, we push it up because the Megillah can't be taken out on Shabbos. And the pasuk says, "V'lo ya'avor," we shouldn't go past the date. Why should we go past the date with regard to Sudas Purim? Now, on one level, we could answer according to the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi is of the opinion which we've mentioned before, that on the 14th, everybody's can be mechuyev a mikra Megillah. In other words, everybody can read. Somebody who lives in a walled city, somebody who lives in an unwalled, everybody can read on the 14th. But generally, we don't paskin that way. Generally, we say we move it up for one of the two reasons that the Bavli gives. Either Shema Yavirenu Dalad Amos Birshus Rabim, or B, because we say that Einei Aniyim Nesuos Lemikra Megillah, and therefore we make it the day before so that they'll have food to eat for Shabbos. Okay? So the Ritva asks the following question, or makes the following statement, I guess. The Ein HaYerushalmi Hazeh Barur. Frankly, says the Ritva, this Yerushalmi is not clear. Ki kesiv, why? Because the Megillah itself says, "V'lo ya'avor." Purim should not go past the 15th. Afilu asimcha namihu. Why doesn't that apply to the mitzvah of Simcha, of the Seudat Purim and Mishloach Manot? The Ritva's question, as I said, that comes from the Gemara, where the Gemara says, don't, right? The Bavli says, on Daf Bet, don't make the mitzvahs of Purim go past the assigned day. Don't, in the case of unwalled cities, past the 14th, and in the case of walled cities, past the 15th. The only thing you can do, says the Gemara there, is you can move them up. So how is it then, asks the Ritva, that we delay the mitzvah of Seudat Purim to Sunday? So the Ran provides an answer, and the Ritva has a very interesting shita. Okay, the Ran says the following: the Ritva comes to a very interesting conclusion. First, the Ran says, okay, the Ran answers that because of the question of the Ritva, we must understand the Gemara to mean when it says velo ya'avor, it refers only to the mitzvah of Kriyasa Megillah. It actually refers to both the mitzvah of Kriyata Megillah and Matanot Evyonim, because those are twin mitzvahs. In other words, when I read the Megillah, I give tzedakah. Otherwise, says the Ran, if I don't understand the Gemara that way, the Ritva is entirely correct. We should not delay Sudat Purim. And he brings a proof from that, from the Gemara that says that the villages push up Kriyata Megillah, but they are Mekayim Simchat Purim Bismana. What does that mean? That means that if I come from a little village and I have to come to the big city to hear Megillah, I do it earlier. But even if I give my matanos le'evyonim, it waits until the day of Kriyas HaMegillah in the big city. And my Purim Suda is celebrated on the day of the Kriyas HaMegillah and all the mitzvos in the big city. I'm not makdim everything. Says the Ran, that's a clear proof that with regard to Sudat Purim, we're not makdim. When the Gemara says that we're makdim, it refers that we push it up, it refers only to Kriyat HaMegillah. Okay? But listen to what the Ritva says. Okay? The Ritva says, Al Kain, Nira, Shebepurim Hachol B'Shabbos. If Purim falls out on Shabbat, Mekaymin Sudas HaPurim B'Yom HaShabbat. Now, he has an explanation for why this fits into the Yerushalmi, which I'll explain to you in a bit. But it seems to me that notwithstanding what the Yerushalmi says, the Ritva is paskening lahalacha against the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says put it off until Sunday. But the Ritva says, no, that doesn't work because the velo yavor refers to all the mitzvot. So with regard to Al Hanisim and with regard to Kriyas HaTorah, that applies to Purim, I can certainly do that on Shabbos, so I do it on Shabbos. Everything else, says the Ritva, comes earlier. So according to the Ritva, either I have to eat on Friday, but he says there's no reason to eat on Friday. I'll eat on Shabbos. I'll add to the Simcha of Shabbos by having my Sudas Purim. What's the answer that he gives for the Yerushalmi? That when he says, when the Yerushalmi says that we're ma'acharim, that we put off, we postpone Sudat Purim, what is he referring to? He's referring only, the Yerushalmi is referring only to those people who live outside of Yerushalayim in small villages. They put off their Sudas Purim that in regular circumstances would be on the day they read Megillah, but since they're reading Megillah early, they put it off. And he says that Gemara, that Yerushalmi, doesn't at all apply to a walled city putting it off. They should have their Sudat Purim on Shabbat. The Meiri says, brings another reason why you don't have Sudat Purim b'Shabbat. He says that you can't. Why? Because he doesn't say it this way, but it's a, there are, how should I put it? There are zugot of mitzvahs. There are pairs of mitzvahs in Purim, right? Kriyas Megillah goes with Matanos Le'Evyonim. Says the Meiri, Sudat Purim is teamed up or is paired with Mishloach Manot. And I can't give Mishloach Manot on Shabbos. The same problem which I have with Mikra Megillah, says the Meiri, I will have with Mishloach Manot. I'm liable to go out in the public area, and I'll pick up my Mishloach Manot, and I'll take it to my friend who lives more than 4 amos away. So I can't do that. For that reason, says the Meiri, Mishloach Manot cannot happen on Shabbat. Therefore, Sudat Purim cannot happen on Shabbat. And for that reason, because of Mishloach Manot, it's put off until Sunday. What would the Ritva say? The Ritva, I suggest to you, would say no. Mishloach Manot should go along with Kriyat HaMegillah and Matanot Le'Evyonim on Friday. And the other three mitzvot, Al Anis and Kriyas HaTorah and Sudat Purim, will happen on Shabbat. So now let's explore for a moment, what is the connection between Mishloach Manot and Sudat Purim? From the Gemara, as well as from the Rambam, it appears that the whole reason for Mishloach Manot is so that people will have what to eat on Purim. Oh, or it's some sort of social experience where each one does something for the other person. That's what the Rambam seems to say. Okay, Ketzad chovas udazu. How do I fulfill my obligation for Sudas Purim? I should eat meat and I should make a nice meal. As much as I can afford. And I should drink enough wine until I fall asleep. And so a person has to send either 2 portions of meat or 2 types of food, or other kinds of things, to someone. What does the pasuk says? The pasuk says that I have to send mishloach manot to a friend. Okay. Shtei manot li'ish. What do you send? You send 2 portions to one person. You know, there's a whole big thing. People said many mishloach manot. It comes from the Rabbi who says that somebody who sends a lot of gifts, a lot of mishloach manot to his neighbors is praised. V'im ein lo, but if he has none, he doesn't have enough, he can't afford it. Machlif im chavero, he switches things with his friend. Zeh sholeach lezeh sudot, v'zeh sholeach lezeh sudato. I prepare a meal, I give it to my friend prepares a meal, he gives me his meal to eat. Just in case you think that sounds bizarre, I just want to tell you the following. When I came to Israel in 1966, so I guess Purim was in 1967, so we stayed in yeshiva for Megillah at night, and then we stayed in yeshiva in Karem B'Yavneh for Megillah on whatever the morning of what do you call it, of Purim was. We heard Megillah, and then we all went for Seudat Purim to the Cheder Ochel, and then we were sort of dismissed. The rest of the day and the next day, which was Shushan Purim, was quote unquote a mini vacation. We were going to be on the road, so to speak. What were we going to do about Mishloach Manot? So we all sat at tables, and we took our food from the center of the table, from the serving dishes, put it on our plates, and we switched with the guy next to us. And that was our Mishloach Manot. I had never done that in my life, but that's what the Rambam says you should do. You pick up your portion, you give it to your friend. He in turn picks up his portion under the assumption that there are at least 2 portions on your plate, and you give it to him. And b'zeh, you were makayim the mitzvah of Mishloach Manot. If you wanted to give more later, you could give more, but you didn't have to worry that you weren't makayim the mitzvah of Mishloach Manot. Okay? Just as another aside, one year I went to Pinsker, and only one only one Mishulach came in that morning, and I haven't given 2 matanos le'avyonim. I said, oh my gosh. So as soon as Megillah was over, we finished davening, I picked myself up and I drove over to the Shtiblach under the assumption that there would be more. And thank God I was Mekayim the mitzvah. But just to remind everybody, this year we're going to take care of it for you. If you give us money to be distributed to the poor, it will be distributed on Friday. And there won't be any necessity to go anywhere else in the city to find another poor person or poor people to give money to. Okay, now going on. One second. Okay. I just want to read you one thing, like among other things. What does Rav Melamed say about all of this? So he says the following: Umadua maknibin likro et hamegillah lifnei haShabbat ve'ilu et hasuda ma'acharim la'achar Shabbat. Why is it that we read Megillah before, says Rav Melamed, and we make Sudat Purim later? In other words, he says that the mitzvah of Kriyat Megillah is fundamentally, it's a Pirsum Menisa. We have an obligation to advertise the nest that happened to us. Says Rav Melamed, if we wait to the day after as opposed to the day before, so on the actual day or days when the Megillah, when the story happened and the nest happened, we will miss those days. If we push it up one day, it will be on a day when a nest occurred. Shenema v'lo yavo. Umi neged, he says, as opposed to which, at the Suda efshar lekayem rak achar shehigia yom hanes. Why do I have a Suda? I have a Suda because a miracle happened on a particular day for the people where they were. In other words, for the unwalled city, the nest happened on the 14th. For the Yerushalmim or the other walled cities, it happened on the 15th. So what am I celebrating? I'm celebrating the mitzvah, the nest, the miracle that happened to the people in those locations. So if I make the Sudas Purim before it happened, I missed the mark. He simply accepts the notion, right, that we said before, that you can't conduct the Suda, not like the Ritva. You cannot conduct the Suda on Shabbos. Therefore, you put it off. Okay. As I said, interestingly, the Meiri concludes that the Suda should be held on Friday, not like the Yerushalmi or the Ritva. I said that. There are those who attempt to cover all bases, and they do the following. One second. They do the following. And it's a marathon, okay? Kayim Kesher, as we've said, there is a connection between Seudat Purim and Mishloach Manot. So, with regard to Mishloach Manot, there are the three dayot that we have already said. In other words, one daya says that you should have your Mishloach Manot on Friday, right? One says that you should, I'm saying with Seudat Purim, the Meiri says you should have it on Friday. The Ritva says you should have it on Shabbos. And most poskim say you should have it on Sunday. But there are people who, to be Yotzei all the dayos, do it all every day of the week. In other words, they'll have a Sudas Purim on Friday. They'll be Maber Achila Vishtia for Purim on Shabbos. They'll eat some additional things to show that they're having a Sudas Purim. They will do what I suggested we did in Yeshiva and switch plates to do Mishloach Manot. And then on Sunday, they'll repeat what they did on Friday. Okay? Most people don't do that, but the minhag is alive. Okay. Now, finally, I'm just going to touch on what about people who are traveling about on Purim? Let's say someone from Tel Aviv comes to Jerusalem. Now, normally the halacha is the following. Wherever I am found at Amud HaShachar, in other words, at dawn, is where I have to read the Megillah, at least, right? So let's assume that I'm in Tel Aviv on Purim is not the way it is this year, but rather Purim is Thursday and Friday. Thursday is Purim in Tel Aviv, and Wednesday night I listen to the Megillah. Thursday morning I listen to the Megillah, and then I pick myself up either before Thursday night or on Thursday night, but I get to Yerushalayim before dawn on Friday. I have to hear the Megillah again, okay? All right? Even though I celebrated it already in Tel Aviv. If I come after Amud HaShachar, then I'm potter from hearing the Megillah, I'm potter from all the mitzvahs. I've already done them. Okay, that's in a normal year. What about Purim Mishulash? I can't come from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem on Shabbos morning after Amud HaShachar because I can't travel. So am I obligated, is the Tel Avivi obligated to go to do anything on Shabbat, which the Yerushalmim have to do? Normally the halacha is, right, that if I waited till after dawn, I would have to, right? But I don't have to. But here, you have to, as I said, you have to be in Yerushalayim already on Shabbat. So the psak halacha is as follows. Haprazim hanimtzayim b'mkomam b'yom shishi, those, right, from the unwalled cities who are in their place on Friday, v'nosim liYerushalayim l'Shabbat, and they pick themselves up to go to Yerushalayim for Shabbat. In this case, einam chayavim l'kayim et mitzvot hapurim biyachad im hamukafim. They are not obligated to do with those who live in Yerushalayim. In other words, they don't have to say Al Anisam on Shabbos. They don't have to listen to the Kriya of Purim. Because they were already were Yotzei the mitzvah. But on the other hand, if they generally live in Yerushalayim, but this year they went to Tel Aviv for Friday, right? If they generally live in a walled city, but somehow they found themselves in Tel Aviv on the 14th, then those people who come from Tel Aviv, they are obligated to once again be makayim the mitzvos of Purim. I'm going to just finish this and then point out an anomaly. Adam Yerushalayim sheyeh b'yom shishi b'Yerushalayim u'b'Shabbat ba'orei haprazim. What happens if somebody, a Jerusalemite, is in Jerusalem on Friday, but goes to Tel Aviv for Shabbos? Lefi rov haposkim, eino yochol himomeit legamri michiyuv hamitzvos. He can't escape all of the mitzvos. V'lachein hu mitchayev lekayem et hapurim keminhag mekomo haragil. So therefore, he is obligated to fulfill the mitzvahs of Purim as he normally would. Kamuvan, it's understood. Shebematzav zeh kayem safek mesuyam. It's misafek. I mean, we don't know. Does he really have to or does he not? It's better for the Jerusalemites to stay in Jerusalem for Shabbos than go look somewhere else. Fascinating. In other words, he should do the mitzvos. Now, he would have heard Megillah and given Matanos Le'Evyonim already on Friday, because that's what we do in Yerushalayim. But with regard to the other mitzvot, I don't know exactly what they're referring to here, because it's really al hanisim and whatever, he should only do them without a bracha. He should add al hanisim ve'ein bekach mishun hasafek, because then it's not a suffix thing. There are situations that I was privy to one situation where somebody who was a Yerushalmi had to leave on the night of when it was Purim or left. It must have been the night or the day of Purim when it was Purim in Tel Aviv, and traveled from Yerushalayim to the airport and got on a plane to go to America. And by the time they got to America, it was no longer Purim. And that year they just missed Purim because they couldn't be Mekayim Tetvav there because it wasn't Purim there and everything. And they had to, so to speak, give up on Purim that year. But that's an anomaly. It doesn't happen often, and I don't recommend it. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
I just wanted to say that it was the second time today that I heard this notion of doing mishloach manot at the dinner table by passing. I was listening to Rabbi Rekefetz here earlier this morning, and one of the Talmidim pointed out that that's a tried and true yeshiva bacher trick. Right. Not trick, but practice.
It's a way to handle the situation.
Right, and I think he mentioned that there is some there is a day of doing mishloach manot on Shabbat, and that. Yes,
I said that. You could do it that way on Shabbat.
Right.
In other words, according to those who say that you got to take care of, you do it all 3 days, you do whatever you do. In other words, either you do all the mitzvahs on Friday, according to one shita, or you do some on Friday and some on Shabbos. So since your Sudat Purim would be on Shabbos, and you would have a Sudat Purim on Shabbos, you do Mishloach Manot on Shabbos, right, and then you would repeat it again on Sunday. Possibly. I tell you, unless anybody has any specific questions regarding what the shiurim I've already given about this, on Wednesday we're up to, I propose that maybe we'll discuss the Megillah.
Okay, great.
Okay. If anybody has any questions or wants to discuss another topic, drop me a note and I'll be happy to whatever.
I do have a comment now, Barry, and I'm curious to know whether any of the rabbis have picked up on it. For I don't know how many years, only Shushan Purim can come on Shabbos, not the regular Purim. And by definition, Shushan Purim is only Yerushalayim and a walled city from way back when, and there's a suffix as to whether any of those really are existing now. But in Yerushalayim, for existence, there's an Eruv. So what's the problem with carrying the Torah around or giving gifts to your friends? I mean, because you got an Eruv.
Yes, but the problem is that Chazal did not want you to get used to thinking that you could do that, and maybe you'll go somewhere where there isn't an Eruv, and you'll think I can take my Megillah anywhere. We covered this because what they said was, we're concerned that you'll get used to doing this, and you'll be in a place where there is no Eruv, and you'll think you can do it, which you can't. Shabbos, Kriyas HaTorah, you don't have to worry about it. Why? Because it's a weekly occurrence. And so it's in your mindset or in your consciousness that on Shabbos, I don't take the Torah out. It may not be in your consciousness about the halachas of Purim, about Mishloach. I'll get overwhelmed. That's what the poskim say. I just think it's Purim. I'll forget it's Shabbos. With regard to Kriyas HaTorah, I mean, there was a question, why, if this is what it is for the Megillah, why isn't it the same thing by Kriyas HaTorah? Because there's a Shabbos consciousness with regard to Kriyas HaTorah that doesn't exist with regard to Purim. That's the reason.
They say there,
Okay.
Just
Anybody
for
else?
everybody's information, I already posted the link for Thursday night's Megillah reading, but I'll be posting it several times more. But we will be starting Megillah with, in other words, it will coincide with Mariv. We're going to be broadcasting, I imagine, Mincha and Mariv. And Mincha will be at Bruce.
Well, it has to
Mincha's at
be earlier
5:05
than,
and
it's earlier
5:05
than
and Mariv is
normal.
at 5:55.
Mincha is at 5:05 and Myrav is at 5:55.
Right.
So Megillah will be in or about 6:05. A few
Correct.
minutes before, a few minutes, whatever.